Welcome to Gracefully Imperfect, a podcast for the all-encompassing Black man, the professional, the entrepreneur, the student, the family man, the father, and the everyday survivor. I'm your host, Semantic 7. And on this journey together, we will discuss all things related to fatherhood and parenting, morality and ethics, striving to become mentally healthy, our role within our households and our family, health and fitness, and I dare not to forget, there will be a lot of sharing of our personal developmental stories that have shaped us to who we are today. So let's go on this journey together and center our consciousness, relax our mind. Off we go to the depths below. Peace, love, blessings, and abundance to all of you. So ecstatic to have you on this platform for another week. I'm so privileged and honored to host this podcast for another week. Thank you so much for choosing this podcast out of the thousands of podcasts that you could choose from on your listening device and listening platform. And for whatever your reason for choosing this one, I am grateful, I am honored, and I deeply, deeply appreciate you. I also would like to take this opportunity to let the Creator and the universe know that I am overwhelmed with gratitude. Gratitude for being able to have just given the abilities and the discipline, the resources, the wisdom to not only develop and construct this podcast, but to keep going through it all. As we've seen in the month of May, there were two catastrophic events. In the backdrop of Mental Health Awareness Month, in the backdrop of African liberation, in the backdrop of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and all the other significant events that took place in May. In the backdrop, there was still calamity, social plight, grief, angst, aghast, disenfranchised grief, and so much more. So we transitioned from one month to another of going through all those things during a time where we should have been standing in solidarity with one another, talking about a very critical component of what it means to embody the human condition, and that is mental healthiness. That was on my last podcast episode, where I've talked about what's going on in the backdrop, in that background, as there's supposed to be a national uplift, national encouragement, national cooperation, our black people are being targeted. They've been profiled. They're being murdered in cold blood. I don't want to make this a gloomy, dark episode. I just feel so impelled to bring that up because from my lens, being Afrocentric, or I'm trying to be as Afrocentric as I possibly can be, living in this Eurocentric society called America. I see all of our traumas interconnected. I see all of our fight for justice and liberation and sovereignty and equity interconnected. And I see that our struggle for better quality of life for our families, economic independence, and I believe all of that has to be entangled with the African collective in order to make this manifestation become a reality. Yeah, with all that being said, family, in light of everything that we've been talking about, especially in the month of May, what I wanted to do is take a different approach. I wanted to use this opportunity with all of you to talk about an eternal phenomenon that we all share, that we all experience, and that we all need. And that eternal phenomenon is love. And I know what you're thinking, or at least I know what I would be thinking if I was listening to this. Why do you want to bring up love? There are elders, there are children, there are pillars in the community being gunned down, being killed, being left for dead, being targeted, being discriminated against. There's a genocide, Kyle. How can we talk about love? Those sentiments and those grievances are valid and reasonable. And I share in that anger, that disgust. I share that there is a moral callousness that has already been present, that's already been seeping through the fabric and thread of American society. And I just think that, even through it all, we have to look at the human condition as a black family, as a disenfranchised and marginalized family, as a family that's been relegated for so long. It's our duty to look at everything from a holistic perspective, total body, even though that there are racially charged, racially targeted killings. But that's entrenched with deep-seated hate. There is still love. Someone out there is getting married for the first time. Someone out there in this world is bringing in a beautiful child through labor. Someone is going out and experiencing travel with their closest kinship and writing in their journals how this is the best time of their life. Some people are going to therapy and finding solace, insight, and understanding about the past traumas that have created dysfunction and created incongruence between their thoughts, their behaviors, and their feelings. There's so much love still being permeated through this world. And I think that we will be doing the human condition an injustice. I think that we will be doing black families a disservice if we do not address the duality of the existential dynamics of living in a shared universe. Where there's chaos, there's love. And where there is love, there's chaos. I listened to Dr. Umar Johnson one time, and he gave a very solid definition of love. And this definition really resonated with me because it made me think about all the conversations that I've had with my wife about why we chose each other. Why we stayed in each other's lives, and why we continuously improve upon our connection and our cohesiveness. In this working definition, he said that love is a function of your priorities and values. And I don't disagree with that at all. We love who we love based upon what we deem important and significant. And we love who we love because at some level, some elemental level, the individual that we are willing to share in love, share in the experience of love, aligns with the different frameworks that we hold true. I started thinking about love. I started thinking about everything that goes into love. And love is a very dynamic, complex, complicated, hard to really wrap your finger around it because it's so subjective and it's relative to the human experience. And by no means is what I'm about to say about love a empirically based way of approaching and embodying and practicing love. I'm a firm believer, and I've been doing this on all these episodes, and I'm a firm believer of synthesizing and aggregating information from trusted sources. And I'll extend that to say synthesize and aggregate information from trusted sources that resonates with my personhood, my perspective, the lens that I wear to observe and view and understand the world. And based on that, I looked at 3 components of love. You have the pillars. This is the foundation. It's what provide the necessary and appropriate support to propel love, to cement love, to create that dynamic love, energy, and connection with someone. And then I looked at 5 essential qualities. And these specific qualities are demonstrative behaviors and relational interaction activities. In other words, those qualities are about building that alliance, that partnership, that cohesive nature. That friendship. And then lastly, the top structure to this foundation, the overarching broad-based pursuits. You could also look at this as a legacy in the making. And these are 5 goal-oriented endeavors that within a love relationship. And when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about love with someone that you want to solidify a long-term commitment with. A lot of times, that ends in marriage. There are some people who stay together for long periods of time because whatever their attitude and relationship to the idea of marriage is, and they stay together and they operate in their own perfect union without having to go through marriage, whatever your fancy. But that is the way I'm looking at love. And from these broad-based pursuits, this is the legacy in the making, the goals. These are the things to strive for. There's a bunch of things going on in the day-to-day. There's a bunch of proclivities that you will be inclined to adapt. But the broad-based pursuits is what gives the fuel, that would provide the discipline, that creates the habits and the behaviors. And if you don't have that, then you haven't figured out how to share the journey with your loved one. when I look at the 5 pillars, I like unconditional regard, respecting and dignifying someone regardless of what they've done, their past transgressions, their traumas, their deficits and shortcomings. The narrative that they tell themselves. You love that you desire that person. You love that person. You cherish that person, no matter the circumstances. And then there's sublime intimacy. Sublime meaning excellent and grandeur, and intimacy means closeness. And intimacy is what creates, it serves us to create a deep, meaningful, lasting connection with one another. I was reading about this, I forgot her name, and I apologize for not recalling this LMFT name, but she did a study. She did a research and wrote a book about the different pillars of intimacy. And the pillars of intimacy, they're all interconnected. However, some intimacy domains may have more. There may be more attention in some intimacy domains than the other, and there may be some intimacy domains that are stronger than the other. And so those intimacy domains are emotional, intellectual, recreational, and that's 3. And I'm trying to remember the other ones. Sexual intimacy. And there's 1 or 2 more. But those are the different domains of intimacy that provides a very strong electromagnetic radiating connection and closeness with your loved one. The next pillar is adoration. Deep honor, deep respect, deep appreciation for someone. And it kind of coincides with unconditional regard, because you dignify that person. You respect the individualhood of that person and everything that comes with it. The next one is vulnerability. The power to be exposed. The power to be seen. And I also look at it as being vulnerable enough, or being exposed and open enough, that encourages exposure and openness from your loved one. You start peeling back those layers and you start really seeing what's under the surface. You start learning about those fears and anxieties, those desires and pleasures and excitements, the deepest, darkest secrets, the never have I ever stories, the stories that we tell ourselves mentally and psychologically that may cause limitation, unworthiness, resentment. Vulnerability is the vehicle to all of that. And then the last pillar, which I think is probably one that gets overlooked: mutually aligned cultural, social, political, economical, and ideological framework. When I look at a long-term committed relationship, I think about how our thoughts, our behaviors, our emotions, our ideas, our conceptions are all becomes entangled with one another. When you bring kids into this world, you gotta find a way to, how do we fuse our ideas? How do we fuse our belief systems and value systems and our code of ethics and morals to build this human being, to develop this human being? It's an entanglement it's an intertwinement that we must have. And if our frameworks aren't aligned, then that will cause dissent and discord, disagreement, and which eventually will lead to our demise. And so those are the 5 pillars. It's the foundation, the foundational framework of love, the supporting mechanisms of love. And then the 5 essential qualities: honesty and transparency. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people or have read scholarly research on therapeutic studies where there's always a disconnect, where there's always a lack of understanding of one's own intentions. And that has a lot to do with honesty and transparency being devoid in a loving relationship. If being accurate and being precise with your thoughts and your words and your feelings, if that is not a priority, then I believe at that point that you are perpetrating a fraud. Honesty and transparency creates clarity and eliminates and mitigates confusion. The next one: communicating and establishing parameters and boundaries. We are still individuals. We still have this individuality to us that we must protect and serve. That's why I believe in the loving relationship, there has to be an identified line where we can coexist, but we can love earnestly, but we know these pockets or these zones that we have that we must protect in order to continuously give selfless energy. I'm not talking about in these zones to where you are being, that you're being sneaky or shady, clandestine in nature. But if you value peace and if you, or I should say, isolation, and part of your parameters and your boundaries is that I need to have some form of isolation for my meditation, for reading, for reflection, etc. As long as it is healthy and as long as that it amplifies and improves and transcends the relationship for self and for the person and for the extended bodies that are produced in this relationship. Anything unhealthy and anything that is morally or unethically incongruent with the covenant of I am yours and you are mine, I believe at that point that you are setting yourself up for failure and you're inviting shame, hurt, and pain. The next one, establish trust and safety. This can happen in so many different forms. There's no one right way to do it. It is every contact that you make, every engagement that you make, every opportunity to connect, is an opportunity to build and sustain on safety and trust. Showing your person that you are reliable and trustworthy, that you are the gatekeeper to their deepest fears and frustrations. That you hold the key to their strongest emotions and strongest memories and traumas, and that you protect that key and you safeguard that key from anyone, from anything. That's how I look at safety and trust. And it has to be a quality in a relationship in order to make the relationship healthy, to make it thriving. And thriving in a sense of the relationship is generating positive behaviors, positive outcomes. An investigative mindset is another quality. Humans are ever changing. The environment is ever changing. And with that being said, who you marry, who you decide to be in a committed relationship with 8, 10, 12 years ago may not be the same. So we always have to have an inquisitive mentality of ensuring that we are maintaining a comprehensive assessment and evaluation about our person. If there is a shift in their emotional stability, their psychological fitness, their spiritual outlook, we must look into that, examine that compassionately, delicately, with conviction and love. Because thing about a relationship, what I've learned just being in mine, is that the relationship will eventually die off if there is not a commitment to change together and not to honor the changing forces that are taking place in each other's mind, body, and spirit. And the last quality is reciprocity. It's nothing like feeling that you are pulling the weight of yourself and someone, and you don't feel that you have a support system or a shoulder, a minimal shoulder to lean on when you are in disarray. Reciprocity is vital to cementing trust and safety. If I'm only showing up, if I'm only putting in the effort, the energy, the sweat, the blood, the tears, and I don't see that you are willing to go into battle with me with sword and shield, that you're not willing to deconstruct this the distorted colonial lens that have been given to us intergenerationally. If I see that when we're talking about economics and finances, you're comfortable with the status quo, you're comfortable with your current state, and you're not thinking about the higher level pursuits. If I'm thinking about your needs all the time and considering your needs and fulfilling your needs, or at least trying to, and invariably my needs are being met, I don't feel valued, I don't feel seen, I don't feel noticed, I don't feel appreciated. All that creates an incongruence and dysfunction in the relationship that can also create resentment. And that's how, if resentment creeps in, that wandering eye starts to becomes ever present. And then for the broad-based pursuits, cultural enrichment and knowledge, and identity-centered education. I want to tackle those two. I think those two go hand in hand. When I think about building a legacy, building a family, building a kingdom, I think about, the acculturation process. I think about the traditions, the rituals, the practices, the moral principles, the ethics, the virtues. I think all of that goes into cultural enrichment and knowledge. Honing that, cultivating that, sharing it, imparting it on our little ones who are growing up in our image. But I think at a fundamental level, especially since a lot of us in North America are part of the diaspora is that we have to come to an agreement on what culture do we embody, do we embrace. Is it the culture that our parents were, was it the culture of our parents? Or is it the culture that we believe through knowledge, wisdom, and truth? Some of us didn't grow up in Afrocentric, Pan-African households. But if that is what you believe in now, that is the guiding light to how you share your culture, how you embrace it and practice the culture. And then with identity-centered education, I've just learned this recently, that the institutions that you're in needs to complement your culture and identity. In North America, some of us are in that bind to where the institutions that we were in were based upon the institutions that were available and accessible to us. I believe that when you are building a kingdom, building a family, that your education, or I should say that, or the tools and the pursuits to acquire knowledge has to complement how you see yourself, who you are, and also how you want to be seen by other people and other groups. Another pursuit is finances and economics. It's a major killer in a relationship. Each of you have to be on one accord. Something that I have dealt with in our marriage is the anxieties and the stress, the underlying anxieties and stress when it comes down to economic development and finances. When there is trust and safety in a relationship, in order to work through those different things that make arouse anxiety, fear, and frustration, and even in some situations, discontent for one another, there has to be a level of compassion. There has to be the vulnerability and the willingness to meet that person where they are. Not meet them where you want them to be or where you are. But if you have a more stronger foundation and mindset and a certain aspect of keeping this relationship afloat, keeping it striving and thriving, then you have to use a very compassionate voice to impel your person to see what you're seeing and to encourage them earnestly with conviction that this is a part of what we agreed upon as a legacy builder. Demonstrate to them how to get there, how to acquire the knowledge, how to change their micro behaviors and habits. And that's one thing I learned for the finances piece. And that can go for any other aspect. Another one is spiritual growth. As Black people, we are spiritual beings. Historically, our spiritual systems were core tenets to our culture and identity. Our spiritual systems have been plagiarized. They have been taken from us and used in different religious bodies to promote morality, ethics, and to enhance the theological context of that said religion. We are spiritual beings. And the way we connect with cosmetology, with nature, with ourselves, with moral and ethical frameworks that guides us to live virtuous lives. We have to be connected and intertwined with spiritual growth, in spiritual growth. And in order to become a better version of yourselves, you have to. Spiritual growth is one of those things that is lifelong. It's never ending. It's all encompassing. And this spiritual growth, and this, or I should say, the spiritual journey that you're on, it requires both individuals to be open, to be receptive, and to be inviting when one may feel disconcerted and the other one is thriving and finding ways to express themselves spiritually, finding themselves having a more seamless experience. We complement each other, so therefore that we have to get on the same path. And lastly, parenting. In a committed, loving, marital relationship, parenting is typically an overarching goal. The procreation and the begetting of children, bringing them in this world, imparting knowledge, culture, and a sense of identity, facilitating a pathway to truth and wisdom and education. Giving them the intangibles that guides their character, their behavior, the actions, their perspectives, their point of views. And all of this is out of love, based off of our priorities and values, of wanting to be parents, of wanting to build, to extend and expand the family kingdom. I've thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation with all of you. I'm also very honored that we can partake in this conversation despite the hatred that's going on, that's being permeated throughout this country. And I really do appreciate everyone being their most emotional, vulnerable, and perfect selves, to look in the mirror and say, even though that I am going through what I am going through, there is always love. I am love. The universe, the natural world is love. And I am a vessel to harness, to channel, to share, and express love. I want to leave you all with the quote of the day. And the quote of the day is, "Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place," by Zora Neale Hurston. All right, family. This has been a tremendous conversation. I appreciate you being here in this safe space. I appreciate wherever you are in this world. I honor your existence. I value who you are and your narrative, how you perceive and embody and exude love. I also want to say that I love all of you. Honestly, wholeheartedly, and deeply. I cannot wait to have another conversation with all of you. Be blessed, be loved, be prosperous, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Peace and love.